Hello, and today I'm going to show you how you can present a student or learner name in your Lectora content. So you can get your Lectora content to pull through the student name from the learning management system and present it in any content that you've built. Can add a really nice personal touch where you're able to kind of reference the learner or student by name and make them feel much more familiar with what they're seeing. So you might have an avatar in and you can call them their real name in that avatar, etc. So mine here is just saying welcome Ewan, who's me, and that's kind of been presented in there from the LMS. So it's got this information from Moodle, which is what I'm using here, and I've put another little step of a check in here, and I'll show you what I'm doing here, where it might be that I don't like to be called Ewan. That's just my name in the learning management system, so I've got an option to rename myself here as well. So what I can do is I could just put a different name that I like. So Angel is my middle name, so I could put Angel in there, and it will now present Angel for the rest of the course instead. And you'll see that that information is changing live on the page. That is a feature of Lectora 21. So if you're using Lectora 19, it won't do that. You do need to use a change content action to update the variable to its latest version. But version 21 nicely has live variable changes on a page. All of this tutorial is still relevant if you're using Lectora 19. It's just if you want to show them the new name that they've put in, you just need to put a little extra work into it, which I'm sure you're already familiar with change content. But if you did need me to go through that as well, sound off in the comments and I'll have a look at this in Lectora 19 as well, because I do still use that. So let's have a look how I've done this. So I've just got my Lectora project open here. I added my avatar, he isn't in my latest version. I just thought I'd pop him in there whilst I'm going through the tutorial. So you'll see here that we've got welcome var learner name. So it is actually just using a variable to display that name. So if you were called Mark and you'd opened up that course in Moodle, it'll say welcome Mark in there instead of welcome Ewan. And what we need to present the learner name is I've just made 3 variables to work with this. You don't have to have 3 variables, but I just like to split the name and then have like a final saved version of what that learner might want to be called throughout the course. So in my case, I've got a first name variable. I usually use capital letters on each word just to make it a little easier for me to see where the word changes. So I've got a first name variable, a last name variable, and a learner name variable. So this is the saved variable that I'd be using throughout my entire project to present that that learner's name on any new pages that they come to as well. And I've just set an initial value of learner in there as well, just in case the learning management system isn't pulling the name. So it would just say learner instead. So you could have an initial value in there for whatever you like. Because, you know, in this case, it would say hello learner, welcome learner, sorry, if it wasn't able to grab the student name. And then they can change that learner to whatever they'd prefer it to be in there. So we've got 3 variables, and then we're just going to run a bit of JavaScript to get the student name from the learning management system. Now, I'm not a JavaScript programmer, so you absolutely do not have to have experience in JavaScript to follow this tutorial. I'm just going to write the JavaScript in the description, and you can just take it exactly like that, and I'll just tell you what each bit of it is doing, just in case you want to name your variables slightly differently. You don't have to use these names I've got here. You might be happy with naming those differently, and you can do that. That is absolutely fine. So I've just got a get name group. I like to put my actions in groups. In this case, I've got 2 actions. You might not need 2 actions. You might only need 1 action in there, but I've got 2, and I just like to group those together. And then I've got a action on top of my assignable unit, which is just running this group. So it's just going to run the group every time the page loads, actually. You could put it on a page if you want just your first page on the course, and then it would never run again. I usually just like to get it running on every page, and then it's just going to do these two actions. So I'll go through the JavaScript in a bit more detail, but it just runs JavaScript, and then it adjusts learner name. So I'm going to modify variable, my learner name variable. I'm going to set it equal to whatever the variable first name is. Because the first thing I'm going to try is see if that learner likes to be called their first name. So you could do this differently. You could put first and last name in there if you wanted. If you want to present it as a full name to start off with. So I'll just expand this text box here with the value, and then I just get my other. There we go. So it would populate it as Ewan Hill, first name and last name. So you could do that if you wanted as well, or you could change it to something else. But I'm just going to set my learner name to whatever first name it is. So we need these actions here. So this is the most important one, run your JavaScript. So you can actually have a student name already. When you've got an assignable unit, a variable called AICC student name becomes available to use, and you can just present that in your course. The problem is it doesn't present it in a way that you would usually expect to reference someone. So it would put it as last name, then a comma, then a space, and then the first name, which presented on a page, it wouldn't really look like how you would greet someone or how you would call someone by name. I don't often go to people and they say, oh, hello, Hill, Ewan. So it doesn't present it in a very nice format. So what we're doing is we're looking at that AICC name, and we're just going to scramble it a bit so we've got it as a first name and a last name. But you do have a variable available already, which is the AICC student name. So if I put that in here, there you go there, see, that's the variable that's already there available. But I'd say it's very rare that you would use that to reference a learner, because it just doesn't present it in a great way. Maybe on a certificate, because it might, it looks quite professional with last name and then first name with a comma in the middle for a certificate, but otherwise you're not really going to. So let's have a look at this JavaScript, and I will put this in the description as well so you can copy and paste it from this video. So this is all you need to do. Just these 3 lines is what you can copy and paste, and I'll tell you what it's doing. So at first it's creating a temporary variable called name, and it's looking for the AICC student name. It's getting that name, and then it's splitting it. So it's splitting the AICC student name, and it's doing it by the comma. So it's looking for the comma, and it's, if you imagine a pair of scissors coming in at the comma, and it's cutting it in half, so you no longer can see the comma, and it takes what's before the comma and what's after the comma. So in this case here, and then it's looking for our variable in our course called last name, so VarLastName, and it's setting VarLastName as whatever is in name 0. So the reason it's doing 0 is because student name takes the last name first. So the last name is the first part of that student name variable, and it's going to take that temporary variable that we've got there, name, and it's going to say, okay, I'm going to populate last name with whatever is that first part of the split of name, and then it looks for the first name and it sets that variable, and it looks for the second part of that split, which in the case is the first name because it does the first name as the last part of it. So this JavaScript has now populated my two variables that I've created, and it's put it as the last name and first name. Now these must be exactly what you have written as your variable in Lectora. So if I had this, the code would not work because it would not be able to find a variable called first name with a lowercase n. So however you want to name those, and you can name them whatever you want, just make sure you name it exactly the same as how you've got it written as the variable in this JavaScript here. And that's all you need to do. Okay? Luckily, in Lectora 21, you can actually insert variables as well, so you'd be able to pop it in there. You'll notice I'm not using the learner name variable in here. So the first thing it's doing at 0 seconds is it's running that JavaScript where it finds the variable name and turns my two variables into a split of that variable name. So I've now got my first and last name split up. 0.1 seconds later, it's now going to populate learner name with the first name, just like I said there. And then we've got it. So hey presto, it's now possible for it to appear on the page like this. That's all you need to do. In sense of actions, that is. I'll just say, sorry. So then the last thing that you must do to get this to work, and this was the part that I kind of kept on not seeing in the courses, you must have a text box that references all of those variables, because that JavaScript will, if they're not presented in the course, so if there's nowhere in that course for them to find this, Lectora will only really generate a reference for those variables as soon as somewhere tries to show it. And if you don't try to show it, so if I didn't have this text box here, this JavaScript would fail to even find the student name variable because it's not presented in the course, so it's not within the code that's there ready yet. So you've just got to put a text box, and I usually put it off canvas so it's not displaying where your learning content is, but it immediately populates all 4 variables, so all of your actions are ready to start using those variable names. And that's the best way I found to do this. You could do other things. You could have an action referencing the variable, and then it would create the variable within the code, but I like to do it just by putting all 4 variable names off canvas. So the first thing this course does just as it runs is it spits out all of those 4 variables and what their defaults are at the moment, and then my JavaScript can find those variables and start playing around with them as it needs to. So those are your 2 important steps. This action group here, and then creating the text box with the variable references in. And then you can present learner name wherever you want in your course, and it will display a personalized name. Now, this won't take too long, but I'll just quickly go through my additional step that I've added in where someone can change that if they like. So I've just added a free text entry. I'll just label that a bit nicer because you'll notice when I hovered over it in Moodle, it just said entry-1. So I'll give it a bit of a nicer name so it looks better when we next look at that. So as soon as you create a text entry, it will create a variable as well, and it usually creates it as like kind of entry 1001 or something along the lines of that. I've just renamed it as name entry, so I'm calling the variable name entry. I can't populate it with one of my already made variables, so I've just called it name entry. And then I've just put some initial text in there, which is type preferred name here. So it's just the instruction to the learner to type a name there if they want to. And then we've got 2 actions on our enter name here. Top one isn't really necessary, but I just like it because it just made it a little bit cleaner. my top one is just setting name entry to 0 to nothing, to a null value, if its current value is type preferred name here. And the reason for that was when I first started typing my name here, as soon as you input in here, it puts whatever's in that text box as the variable value. So it would suddenly say welcome type preferred name here. I just thought it looked a bit ugly. So if type preferred name here was the variable value at the moment, it just makes it go blank, which is why when I'll load it again. Which is why when you see it like that, oh yeah, it's just got it there. So if you do delete, you can't get rid of it entirely. But if you happen to select all and delete, it just removes the reference there. So that's all that's doing, is it's just, if they are selecting all, it just means that it kind of gets rid of it. And then this is the important one. So on select or change, it's going to target learner name and set equal to whatever name entry. So whatever's been written in that box, it resets learner name to that in this case. And there you have it. That's all you need to do really, and then you can use learner name from future onwards. With this method, actually, just suddenly thought, with this method you would need to have these actions here on just your first page, because if you think about it, this action is always going to set it back to first name, because this action runs on every single page. So if you wanted to use this name entry method here, you will just need to pop these actions on your page instead, which is absolutely fine. So we'd just put these down here. Let me just see if my mouse is going to work okay. Okay, we get the point anyway. I think it's just got rid of them. Oh no, it's put them in there instead. My mouse is being a little funny. Let's pop them there. There we go. And that's how you do it. So let me know if you have any trouble or if you need me to go into any more detail, but that's how you can get the student name and turn it into a nicer personalized name in your Lectora content. Thank you ever so much for watching.